The public is being conditioned to watch the sky. Media reports focus on Russia's updated tactics involving mass missile and drone strikes. This is a deliberate, systemic misdirection. The kinetic spectacle of explosions is a distraction from the real vector of attack. The war's most valuable output is not a new type of drone. It is the millions of hours of combat data now being used to train battlefield AI. This isn't a theory. The decoder confirms Ukraine is sharing this data for AI training. The primary objective is not kinetic attrition. It is systemic paralysis. While you watch for missiles, the real war will be fought in total silence, targeting the two vulnerabilities of a modern superpower: undersea data cables and low Earth orbit satellites. The Greenland Strategic File warns of potential conflict in the high north, not for territory, but for control over the critical submarine routes where these cables lie exposed and undefended. This is the blueprint for creating a blind Leviathan. Consider a Taiwan contingency. The U.S. Navy, the most powerful kinetic force in history, becomes a floating liability the moment its satellite links are blinded and its communication with command is severed by a few strategically cut cables. It cannot see. It cannot coordinate. It cannot receive targeting data or launch orders. It is a multi-trillion-dollar asset, neutralized by an attack that costs a fraction of 1%. The result is a non-kinetic decapitation of command and control. With Taiwan's semiconductor fabrication plants representing a systemic risk to the global economy, as the U.S. itself has warned, a paralyzed fleet cannot intervene. The Leviathan is blind. The cost to the aggressor is negligible. The cost to the superpower is total strategic defeat. The solvency trap is triggered not by a missile, but by silence. The motive for this strategic pivot is not strength. It is a systemic solvency crisis. A conventional, peer-to-peer war is an economic death sentence for any nation-state not holding the world's reserve currency. The kinetic cost of replacing a billion-dollar destroyer or a main battle tank fleet exceeds the political will to sustain losses. CSES analysis on Russia's engagement in Ukraine frames this precisely. A prolonged, unpopular war becomes a domestic liability. It depletes financial reserves, erodes public support, and risks internal political fracture. This isn't a failure of morale. It's a balance sheet problem. The state can no longer afford the price of conventional victory, nor can it accept the political cost of defeat. This insolvency forces a pivot. When you cannot afford to compete symmetrically, you are forced to compete asymmetrically. Weakness becomes the primary accelerant for innovation in low-cost, high-impact weaponry. Reports from the Ukrainian front confirm this blueprint in action. Russia is deploying updated tactics through mass drone and missile strikes, a direct response to the unsustainable cost of conventional ground assault. This battlefield data is the new oil. Ukraine is now sharing millions of hours of drone footage to train next-generation AI, creating a lethal feedback loop. The objective is no longer capturing territory. It is inflicting disproportionate economic pain. The U.S. itself has warned that a kinetic event targeting Taiwan's chip manufacturing would trigger a global economic collapse. The blueprint is clear. Use cheap drones to neutralize a navy, blockade the island, and hold the global economy hostage. This is the solvency trap in its final form. The regional instability you are being shown is not the crisis. It is the laboratory. These designated gray zones are not failures of local governance. They are state-sponsored test beds for a new form of kinetic engagement. They are proxy laboratories where the financial and operational cost of asymmetric warfare is being perfected before deployment against first-tier targets. The evidence is not hidden. According to public-facing reports, Russia is using updated tactics with mass drone and missile strikes in Ukraine. Concurrently, Ukraine is openly sharing millions of hours of drone footage to train AI targeting systems. This is not a bilateral conflict. It is a live-fire research and development program on a planetary scale. The product is an algorithm of attrition. These gray zone laboratories serve one function: to calibrate the solvency trap. CSS analysts have documented how the tactics refined there are designed to neutralize high-value, capital-intensive assets. The goal is to create a scenario where a $50,000 autonomous drone can enforce a multi-billion-dollar kinetic cost on a naval strike group, or, as the U.S. itself warns, trigger a global economic collapse by targeting Taiwan's chip fabrication plants. This protocol makes conventional superiority a liability. Even friction in non-traditional vectors like the Arctic, where Greenland warns of conflict, is leveraged to test supply chain stress and command response times. It is a mathematical certainty. These instabilities are the staging grounds. They are designed to perfect the low-cost tools that force a conventionally superior power into the ultimate zero-sum choice: catastrophic asset liquidation or launch on warning. The conflict in Ukraine is no longer just a war. It is the largest live-fire R&D environment in history. The updated tactics Russia is deploying are not the product of strategy. They are the output of an algorithm, source number 1. This is a mathematical certainty. While legacy media focuses on trench lines, the real asset being harvested is data. Millions of hours of drone footage are being converted into targeting protocols for autonomous swarms, source number 2. This isn't a blueprint for the next war, it is the open-source code for systemic disruption, available to any actor with sufficient motive. The primary vector for this new form of warfare is economic. The global economy's reliance on Taiwan's semiconductor output is not a weakness. It is a pre-calculated point of leverage. Source number 3. A kinetic strike on the island is crude, escalatory, and unnecessary. A strategic power does not dynamite the facility. It severs the supply line with plausible deniability. This brings us to the calibration forecast. To test the West's response protocol and demonstrate a new capacity for asymmetric leverage, a signal must be sent. Not a missile, but a message coded in economic paralysis. According to Rusi analysts, the event must be attribution impossible to avoid a kinetic response, locking the target in a solvency trap. Within the next 12 months, expect a coordinated, non-lethal swarm attack against the power and data infrastructure of a primary logistical hub, such as the Port of Singapore or Rotterdam. The resulting 48 to 72-hour blackout will be officially designated a sophisticated cyber attack by a non-state actor. It is a calibration shot,